When an officer receives an unexpected call from a 3-year-old, he thinks it's a prank. But knowing never to underestimate any emergency calls, he rushes over, and what he finds at the scene churns his stomach. Could it just be a child playing, or something more horrific? The rain hammered against the windshield of Officer Jack Emerson's patrol car, blurring the already fading light of the late October afternoon in Willow Creek, a small town where everyone knew each other. Willow Creek was usually serene, but tonight the relentless downpour added an edge of tension to the air. Jack, a veteran of the Willow Creek Police Department with 20 years under his belt, was exhausted. His bones ached from the damp cold that seeped into his uniform despite the heater blasting in the car. He was looking forward to the end of his shift, a hot meal, and the comfortable silence of his modest home. But just as he was about to relax, his radio crackled to life. Possible domestic disturbance at 245 Rosewood Lane. Caller is a 3-year-old male. Jack frowned. A 3-year-old making a call? It had to be a mistake, a child playing with the phone, or a prank. Yet something in the dispatcher's voice, a mix of disbelief and concern, made his instincts kick in. He couldn't dismiss it. Over his 2 decades on the force, Jack had learned never to underestimate the seriousness of any call, especially when a child was involved. He flipped on his siren, the wail cutting through the rhythmic drumming of the rain. Rosewood Lane was a quiet residential area lined with neat single-family homes. As he pulled up to number 245, a small white bungalow with a neglected flower bed and a rusty swing set in the backyard came into view. An overturned tricycle lay on the walkway, and Jack felt a pang of apprehension. As he stepped out of his car, the cold rain instantly plastered his uniform to his skin. Jack approached the front door cautiously, his hand hovering over his holster. He could hear muffled sounds from inside, a whimper, a soft sob, and a rhythmic thump that sent a shiver down his spine. He knocked firmly, his voice projecting authority and reassurance. "Police, open up." Silence answered him for a moment. Then a small, hesitant voice whispered, barely audible over the rain, "Who is it?" Jack knelt, bringing himself closer to the level of the doorknob. "It's Officer Jack from the police. Can you open the door for me?" The lock clicked, and the door creaked open a few inches. Tear-filled blue eyes peeked out a little boy, no older than 3, with tousled blonde hair plastered to his forehead and a face streaked with dirt and tears. He stood clutching a worn teddy bear. "Are you hurt?" Jack asked gently, his voice softening. The boy shook his head, his lower lip trembling. "No, but Grandpa fell down, and he won't wake up." Jack felt a surge of adrenaline. This was no prank. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, immediately scanning the living room. An elderly man lay sprawled on the floor, unmoving. The air was thick with the smell of damp wool and something else, a faintly metallic scent that made Jack's stomach churn. He rushed to the man's side, his trained eyes assessing the situation. Mr. George Whitman and Pala was unconscious. His breathing was shallow and labored. A pool of blood was slowly spreading beneath his head, staining the worn carpet a dark crimson. Jack's pulse quickened. He checked for a pulse weak and thready. He grabbed his radio and barked into it. "Officer needs assistance at 245 Rosewood Lane. Possible unconscious male. Head injury. Requesting immediate medical backup." The little boy, still clutching his teddy bear, watched Jack with wide, frightened eyes. "Is Grandpa going to be okay?" he whispered, his voice barely a thread. Jack forced a reassuring smile, though his gut clenched with worry. "We're going to take good care of him," he said, trying to project calm despite the urgency. As paramedics rushed in, their movements swift and practiced. Jack gently ushered the boy away from the commotion, leading him to a worn sofa in the corner of the room. He noticed a landline phone on a nearby table, the receiver dangling off the hook. "Did you call?" Jack asked. The boy nodded. "Mommy taught me how," he said, a flicker of pride momentarily eclipsing the fear in his eyes. "If something bad happened, I should call and tell them our address and my name." Jack was astounded. This little boy, barely old enough to tie his shoelace, had the presence of mind to call for help in such a frightening situation. He had potentially saved his grandfather's life. Jack knelt down in front of the boy, meeting his gaze. "You did a very brave thing, son. You did a great job." The boy sniffled and wiped his nose with the sleeve of his pajamas. "I just wanted to help, Grandpa," he whispered. "You're a hero, Mason," Jack said softly. After ensuring that Mr. Whitman was being attended to by the paramedics, Jack sat down beside Mason. He learned that Mason lived with his grandfather while his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ryan Whitman, were away on an extended business trip overseas. Mr. Whitman had a history of heart problems and had recently been experiencing dizziness and weakness. It seemed he had fainted and hit his head on the coffee table. Jack later visited Mr. Whitman at the hospital. The elderly man was awake, though groggy and confused. "Mason saved your life," Jack told him. "He was very brave." Mr. Whitman's voice was weak, but filled with gratitude. "He's a good boy. Smart, too. Takes after his mother." Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this call was more than just another case. Mason's bravery, his love for his grandfather, and the vulnerability in his eyes had touched Jack deeply. He felt a sense of responsibility toward the boy, need to ensure his well-being that went beyond his duty as a police officer. Driving back to the station, Jack wrestled with his conscience. His duty was to uphold the law and protect citizens. But was he overstepping by interfering in Mason's family life? Was he justified in reporting them to Child Protective Services, CPS? It was a gray area, one that made him deeply uncomfortable. Reporting could have serious repercussions for Mason's parents, potentially leading to him being removed from their care. He decided to seek counsel from his captain, a woman he respected for her wisdom and compassion. "Captain Maria Reynolds," Jack explained, his voice thick with concern. "It's a tough one, Jack," Captain Reynolds said, leaning back in her chair, her brow furrowed. "You're right. It's a gray area, but you've got a good heart, and you're a damn good judge of character. If you believe this child is at risk, you have an obligation to act. The system isn't perfect, but sometimes it's the only way to ensure a child's safety." With his captain's support, Jack contacted CPS. He detailed his observations, emphasizing Mason's vulnerability and the potential dangers of his situation. He stressed Mr. Whitman's declining health and his inability to provide adequate supervision for an energetic 3-year-old. He also mentioned an incident involving the kitchen. Mason's eagerness to help had almost set it on fire. The next day, a social worker named Olivia Jensen visited Mr. Whitman and Mason at the hospital. Jack waited anxiously for an update, his mind filled with conflicting emotions. He knew he had done the right thing, yet he couldn't shake off the guilt, the fear that he might have disrupted this family's life irrevocably. Later that afternoon, Jack received a call from Olivia. "Officer Emerson, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We've assessed the situation and will be providing support services to the family. We'll also be working with Mr. and Mrs. Whitman to ensure Mason's needs are met. We're providing Mr. Whitman with home health care assistance to help manage his health and provide adequate supervision. We'll also be contacting the Whitmans to discuss child care options while they're away. Jack breathed a sigh of relief. He had potentially prevented a tragedy and helped ensure that Mason would receive the care and attention he needed. While Mr. Whitman recovered in the hospital, Jack found himself drawn back to Rosewood Lane. He would stop by after his shift, sometimes with a bag of groceries, sometimes with a small toy from Mason. He learned that Mason loved dinosaurs and superheroes and missed his parents dearly. He discovered Mason was a bright, inquisitive child full of energy and curiosity, but also deeply sensitive and in need of affection. Jack, who had never been a father himself, found surprising joy in spending time with Mason. He taught him how to throw a baseball in the small backyard, helped him build blanket forts in the living room, and read him bedtime stories with dramatic flair. He even took him to the police station, letting him sit in his patrol car, try on his hat, and meet his fellow officers, who were charmed by the little boy's enthusiasm. In turn, Mason seemed to adore Jack. He would run to greet him at the door, his face lighting up with a smile that could melt the hardest heart. He would chatter endlessly about his day, his toys, and his dream of becoming a firefighter who rescued kittens from trees. One afternoon, while visiting, Jack noticed a framed photograph on the mantel. It showed a younger Mr. Whitman beaming with pride, holding a newborn baby wrapped in a blue blanket. "Is that you, Mason?" Jack asked. Mason nodded. "Grandpa said I was a tiny baby, and I cried a lot," he said. Jack studied the photo. He saw the love in Mr. Whitman's eyes, the same love he now saw in Mason's. Despite the challenges, this was a family bound by deep affection, a love that transcended distance and circumstance. As Mr. Whitman's health improved and he returned home, Jack continued to visit. He helped with chores, played games with Mason, and shared meals with them, often enjoying casseroles made by Mrs. Whitman. All stories from Mr. Whitman's younger days. Jack became a fixture in their lives, a source of support, stability, and care. He was the one who took Mason to the park on sunny afternoons, pushing him on the swings until he shrieked with laughter. He was the one who bandaged Mason's scraped knees and soothed his nightmares. He listened patiently to Mr. Whitman's worries about his health and hopes for Mason's future. One evening, while having dinner with Mason and Mr. Whitman, Jack received a call from Captain Reynolds. "There's been a break-in at a local jewelry store in Fairview. We need all hands on deck. Can you handle it?" Jack apologized for having to leave abruptly, promising Mason he would be back soon with a story about the daring capture of the jewel thieves. As he drove toward the crime scene, the flashing lights of his patrol car reflected off the wet asphalt. Jack felt a pang of guilt. He had grown accustomed to quiet evenings with Mason and Mr. Whitman, the simple pleasures of their company, the feeling of being needed. He had become attached, and he knew they had become attached to him. The case at the jewelry store turned out to be more complicated than initially thought. It involved a string of robberies across the county. Jack found himself working long hours chasing leads, interviewing suspects, and analyzing evidence. Days turned into weeks. He had little time to visit Mason and Mr. Whitman. He called regularly, checking in and making excuses for his absence, his voice filled with regret. Finally, after weeks of intense investigation, the case was cracked. The culprits were caught and the stolen jewelry recovered. Exhausted but relieved, Jack drove straight to Rosewood Lane, eager to see Mason and Mr. Whitman and share the news. He found them in the living room, playing checkers by the window. Mason, upon seeing Jack, jumped up and ran toward him, arms outstretched, face beaming with joy. "Jack," he shouted, hugging him tightly. "You came back!" Jack hugged him back, feeling a warmth spread through him that chased away the weariness and tension. He had missed being part of something meaningful. A few weeks later, Mason's parents returned from their extended business trip. Jack, unsure how they would react to his involvement, decided to give them space. He stayed away, focusing on work, trying to push aside the emptiness he felt. He told himself that he had done his duty, that Mason was safe and well cared for, and that it was time to step back. But the thought of Masoni's bright smile, his infectious laughter, the way he ran to hug him, filled Jack with longing. One afternoon, while on patrol, Jack received a call from the dispatcher. "Officer Emerson, there's a Mr. and Mrs. Whitman at the station. They're asking to see you." Jack's heart skipped a beat. At the station, he found Mason's parents waiting. They were a well-dressed couple, their faces etched with gratitude and guilt. Mrs. Whitman, her eyes red-rimmed, held a bouquet of flowers. Mr. Whitman extended his hand. "We wanted to thank you," he said, "for everything you've done for our son and my father." Mrs. Whitman added, her voice trembling, "We were so relieved to know Mason had someone like you to look after him while we were away. We can't thank you enough." Jack was taken aback. He had expected resentment, maybe anger, but instead, he was met with appreciation. "It was my pleasure," he mumbled, feeling a blush rise in his cheeks. "Mason talks about you all the time," Mrs. Whitman continued, a smile breaking through her tears. "He calls you his hero, says you're the bravest, strongest, kindest man he knows." Jack's heart swelled. He had never considered himself a hero, but hearing that from Mason's mother filled him with a sense of pride. Mason's parents explained that their frequent business trips were a sacrifice made to provide a better life. They were both successful entrepreneurs, constantly on the move. But they acknowledged they had been neglecting Mason's emotional needs, blinded by ambition. "We were so focused on building a future for Mason," Mr. Whitman confessed, "that we forgot to be present in his present." Mrs. Whitman nodded. "We realized we were failing him. We were so caught up in our own world, we didn't see how lonely he was." They had decided to change. They would prioritize their family over their careers, reduce travel, and improve their parenting. They also considered enrolling Mason in a daycare where he could interact with other children and receive attention. "We want to be the parents Mason deserves," Mrs. Whitman said. Jack listened, impressed by their sincerity. He offered his support not as a police officer or social worker, but as a friend. He left the station feeling a sense of closure. He had helped this family find their way back to each other, potentially prevented a tragedy, and ensured Mason would receive the love and care he needed. As Mr. Whitman recovered at home, Jack continued to visit Rosewood Lane, often bringing groceries, small gifts, or simply spending time with Mason. He learned Mason loved superheroes, dinosaurs, and bedtime stories. Jack discovered that Mason was not just bright and curious, but deeply sensitive and affectionate. Through his relationship with Mason, Jack discovered a newfound sense of purpose. Inspired by the connection, he began volunteering and mentoring at-risk youth. He enjoyed working with young people, offering guidance, sharing life experiences, helping them navigate tough times. Jack became a cherished friend and honorary uncle. He celebrated birthdays, comforted them during illnesses, and shared in both the joys and the struggles. His time with Mason had changed him. No longer just a police officer, he became a mentor, a friend, a father figure. One evening, sitting on the porch with Mr. Whitman and watching Mason chase fireflies in the yard, Jack felt a wave of peace wash over him. "You know," Jack said softly, "I never thought I'd find a place like this, a family like this." Mr. Whitman smiled, his eyes following Mason. Sometimes life surprises you. It brings you unexpected gifts, unexpected love. Jack nodded, heart full of gratitude. He had found a purpose, a family, and a love that transcended blood. A love that began with one small, brave phone call. A love that changed everything.